Texans versus Browns. We know that. We now know the whole playoff picture as well. Let's talk about it in the locker room. Post-week wrap-up, playoff edition.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the locker room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey. Locker room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source. We the pulse of the city too. Landlocked. Got the game in the headlock. Localize every time. Can't stop, won't stop. Yeah, we top two and we not too. Plugged in daily digital on YouTube.
Playoffs. Yeah, playoffs. Texans in the playoffs against the Browns. And in a tradition like no other, the Texans got the first slot. Saturday, Texans versus Browns, 3:30. Little NBC action for you. It's the gift that keeps giving. Texans versus Browns, 3:30 on NBC. They avoid the Peacock game. They avoid a CBS game, which I know a lot of you are probably pleased with. But yeah, Texans versus Browns, 3:30 NRG. A lot to get into on that. We'll get into the other stuff going on around the league. But coming off the high, it was an interesting day of observing. I'm making it sound like a damn funeral. It was pretty much the opposite. Well, unless you're a Jacksonville Jaguar fan. But you got out of bed this morning as a Texans fan. You knew you were going to be in the playoffs. You were probably rooting for the Tennessee Titans, which makes some of you perhaps feel a little bit dirty. But the Tennessee Titans do you a favor, and they hand you a gift to where the rest of the watching it's really kind of irrelevant unless you want to look ahead. And we'll do a brief look ahead here. What happens if the Texans are able to get the dub? Where would you like to be? What would you like to see? I think we can agree on this for the most part, unless you're being one of these weirdos who says, it doesn't matter to me. I don't care who the Texans play. Come on, brothers. Like there might be a time when the Texans get to a point where, well, it doesn't matter to me. I don't care who they face. They just got to take care of business. As long as you got CJ Stroud, you got a chance. Yeah, you got a chance with CJ Stroud, but right now your receivers are banged up and other teams are banged up. So you having some favors when it comes to the path. We've seen some of the great. With Tom Brady has gotten that before. Steph Curry. I mean, he's lived and died with it. So there is a path. There is a team that you should be rooting for. That we'll talk about in a little bit here in the locker room. As far as the money, the Texans open as a 1.5-point underdog against the Browns. This is the same that they opened against the Colts. It ended up getting bet in the Texans' favor. Don't know if that's going to happen this time or not. I thought we might be looking at 2.5 because of what happened last time. But I also understand that the Texans will be at home. I know they were last time, but most importantly, they'll have their quarterback. And they'll also likely have Will Anderson, and they'll also likely have Blake Cashman, both of which missed the game last time. So as far as the line starting at 1.5, it'll be interesting to see what direction that gets bet. I do believe that, and Paul's asking for updates on Grenard. Jazzy's asking if Woods will play. The Woods thing's interesting because he was actually on the field trying to go last night. And that makes you think that there's probably a little bit of a decent possibility that with the extra week of rest that he's going to at least try to go. We're going to have another short-ish week. DeMeco's actually going to speak at noon tomorrow. So we'll find out about that. The Noah Brown thing will be interesting. Because if Noah Brown doesn't play this year or this week, then you almost gotta wonder, like, do you elevate Steven Sims? Like, is Noah Brown ever going to play. We'll keep an eye on that. But yeah, you definitely need everyone. But you open as a 1.5 point underdog against a very likable, very resilient Browns bunch, much like the Texans, except the Texans, they're younger. And I would say one advantage that the Texans have, and the Browns have a huge advantage. Let's get the Browns. The Browns' advantage first is rest. The Browns are going to be very well rested. This week was basically a bye week for them, so the Browns are going to be rested. That's a massive advantage. Like staying off of the on-field type of stuff, the rest that the Browns got is a significant advantage for them, because we know the Texans. We know the Texans aren't that healthy, and we know that the Texans are banged up, and I don't think you get healthier. Like the injury report Tuesday will be really interesting. I'm sure we'll see a lot of the same names that we saw last week, and we might see some new ones. Who knows? But the Browns, the one big advantage they have is rest. An advantage I think the Texans kind of have in this is that they've already played a win or go home game this year. And I know Cleveland's had, games where, if you win, then you're in the playoffs. But they haven't, while they were resting, the Texans were in a win, or they were basically in a playoff game. And that goes back to that rust type of crap that you hear all the time. But the Texans did get some valuable experience. So I do think that that's an advantage that the Texans have. The well-rested Browns versus the Texans who have for the last, week heading into the game, they will have played a win or go home game. So I think that is something that could be in the Texans' favor. The CJ Stroud thing is interesting. CJ Stroud versus Flacco is obviously the matchup that's going to get a lot of attention. Joe Flacco knows how to flip the switch. I'm not going to lie. Joe Flacco in the playoffs, he knows how to flip the switch. Only one time in his career, and I think it was the last time. And this was kind of when you could kind of see Baltimore on the decline, and they were kind of this was before they basically handed the torch to Lamar Jackson. That's the only time Joe Flacco has lost his first playoff game. Every other time, I know they're good Baltimore teams. I'm not sitting here. I'm just giving you the information. But Joe Flacco has only been one and done one time. And he's pretty damn impressive in the playoffs. Here's the numbers. 10-5, 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, completes 56.6% of his passes, which isn't great, but you also got to factor in a lot of these are cold weather games. And plus Flacco's will kind of sling it around. And he has an 88.6 rating. So those are really, really, really good playoff numbers, which can be as much of a symbol of his surroundings. But I think most of you are old enough to remember and seeing Joe Flacco flip the switch when you didn't expect him to. I didn't expect him to. So, playoff Flacco is definitely a thing. And he has a body of work that is respectable. Now, here's the other thing, though, that I want to bring up. And I think the answer to this question is going to be yes. And I think the people in Cleveland know this more than anyone. Like there's not a fan base in the country, in the NFL, that outside of maybe Houston now, that has more respect and admiration for CJ Stroud. All my people in Cleveland, all the diehard Browns fans, they love CJ. They were happy for CJ. They're rooting for CJ. The Browns are playing some good ball now, but it's a competitive, like if you ask like what's the A topic there at times, is it Ohio State or is it the Browns? It's always going to be the Browns. But Ohio State's right up there with them. And some Cleveland people might even disagree with me on that. But the question is CJ is prime time CJ officially a thing? Because leading into the draft, and you heard Laramie Tunsil talk about this, and when CJ Stroud won him over, but leading into the draft, you had, and man, people were mad at Laramie Tunsil during that game. Goodness gracious, those false starts set the internet off. But you were asking yourself, okay, was that game against Georgia when the lights were the brightest, when you weren't really expected to win? Georgia, I think, was a 7-point favorite or whatever. Was that what CJ Stroud is versus the body of work, which was really good, but a lot of times it was up and down by the standards that he had set? Is primetime CJ Stroud officially a thing? And I think based on what you saw yesterday, you got to think maybe that's a possibility. So you talk about Joe Flacco flipping the switch. Got to wonder, is CJ Stroud one of those guys who just flips the switch as well? And one of those guys that whenever the lights are the brightest, he's going to elevate his play. I do want to kind of reel this in a little bit, and I don't want to be a buzzkill, but I think some people are losing their minds over this exciting time, and it's an exciting time. And look, I'll just say this: like, you should feel like one day there's going to be a time when CJ Stroud and DeMeco Ryans are hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. Like, that's how excited you should be about the future of this organization. But let's like really like look at this football team right now, the Texans. Okay, you just beat you didn't have your receivers, but you beat a Colts team that has a secondary that is basically a practice squad. It is a very inexperienced secondary. You also just beat a team that had Gardner Minshew as their quarterback, and had Gardner Minshew or the running back on fourth down with the perfect play call dialed up. Had he caught that ball, then we might be talking about an L. I don't say that to take away from the excitement. I don't say that to take away from the possibility of a run. I say that because these teams that the Texans are going to be facing now are going to be a hell of a lot better than what you saw yesterday with the Colts. Salute to Shane Steichen. Salute to Gardner Minshew. Salute to Jonathan Taylor. Salute to what Indianapolis put out there. But the bottom line is you're going to have to play better. Maybe not necessarily CJ, but the stuff around him. You're going to have to play better than you did yesterday against the Colts. This is a very, very young squad. This is a winnable game against the Cleveland Browns. This is a very winnable game against the Cleveland Browns. This is, you look at what Buffalo can do, and the fact that the one thing that I would worry about, and we'll get ahead of ourselves here, much to the dismay of some, but the one thing that the one thing that I do think that we need to keep in mind is, they're going to have to be a lot better than they were against the Colts. Going to have to. Leo says it's Buzzkill Locker. I'm just telling you, man. I'm excited. I'm more excited than anyone. I've been talking about this team. I've been on this stream. We started this stream. I was finally allowed to do it the day before the start of last season. I've been talking about this team nonstop the whole time. No breaks. 4 hours a day and multiple videos. I think we got 600 videos in that time. I'm not sure. This might be 601, 602. So I'm excited. You think I like covering a dog-butted football team? You think I've liked spending nearly a decade talking about a team that even when you're excited about them, there's a limited ceiling, and they're the worst team on the worst organization? Hell no, I don't like that. But I want to reel it in. I want to lay out the path, but I do think they have a very, very, very good opportunity and a very realistic opportunity to win this game against the Cleveland Browns. Really, really good opportunity to win this game against the Cleveland Browns. 100% opportunity, big time. But they really can. They're really going to have to. They're really going to have to elevate the way they play. And I think DeMeco will admit that as much. You can't have the sloppy penalties. You can't have the You can't have missed opportunities in the red zone. And you're going to have to get after the quarterback a little bit. And you're going to have to do some things against this Browns team differently than you did last time around. But the reality is this right here, the answer to this question being yes, or it appears to be yes, might be all you need. And you always, with all that said, with that being a thing, you always have a puncher's chance. And nobody knows that better than Cleveland Browns fans. So we'll see how it goes. It's going to be fun. They're ahead of schedule right now. I don't want to say they're house money. I think they got a shot. I think they got a shot to win this game. I think they got a really good shot to win this game. Nico was the only weapon against the Colts, 100%. He stepped it up. Probably going to need a little bit more from that. Chris says, can't have as many penalties. CJ is going to ball. Noah and Woods will be back. I wouldn't hold my breath on Noah. We'll see how that goes down. But yeah, Frank says it right on time. The Browns can get got, no doubt. They can easily be got. They're going to be fresher. You're more battle tested. And look, here's the other thing. I want to get to the last time these teams met, because make no mistake about it, it was an assing. It was an absolute beatdown, and the Browns beat the Texans' ass worse than the 36-22. I'm not denying that. I don't think anyone can deny that. But what from that game actually matters? That's the one thing that I would ask. Like, what from that game actually matters? I think there's some things that do, and I think there's other things that don't. And I think these things meet in the middle. It leads to a really good matchup, and it leads to a really good football game. And I'll start with the Texans offense versus the Browns defense. What matters from what we saw in that game versus this week? Well, there's a couple of things that obviously don't matter. You didn't have CJ Stroud. So that right there, you didn't have CJ Stroud. Period, point blank, end of story. You didn't have CJ Stroud. So there's not a lot that you can take from this. Now, the blocking wasn't very good up front. It wasn't very good. That's going to happen. That's something that is probably easier to block for CJ, and CJ is probably a lot more capable of getting rid of the ball than Case Keenum was. But the blocking up front is going to have to be better. You're also going to have to be able to run the rock a little bit better than you did as well. And I don't know how that goes down, but this is the Texans offense versus Browns D. Blocking, you're going to have to block them better, but CJ Stroud's back, so not a lot of stock put in that. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Now, last time out, you had no Will Anderson, you had no Blake Cashman, and we already mentioned Stroud. So you didn't have arguably your best linebacker, although Christian Harris is playing his ass off too right now, to where you got a nice little duo going. And you didn't have Will Anderson. And who knows how Will Anderson's feeling after yesterday. We know he was really banged up. We saw him go down. There were times where it looked like he was kind of favoring the foot/ankle a little bit. But you didn't have Anderson. You didn't have Cashman. I think both those guys are on the field. How effective will they be? Do they appear on the injury report Tuesday? That's going to be something to check out. But as far as the Browns offense, and y'all all know where this is going. I'm seeing this in the comments. Y'all know the deal. As far as the Browns offense, Grenard got banged up in this game also. So you didn't have Grenard. Don't know if you're going to have him this week or not. Didn't have Anderson. Didn't have Cashman. But Amari Cooper just went crazy on you. Last time out, 11 catches, 265, 2 touchdowns in the last meeting. You're going to have to figure out how to guard Amari Cooper. DeMeco Ryan says he doesn't like following guys around. Okay. Steven Nelson was banged up the last time these teams met. I I don't know how healthy Steven Nelson is right now. I know that you might be committed to doing things a certain way, but man, if there was ever a time to maybe change something, having Derek Stingley follow around Amari Cooper might be a hell of a challenge for Derek Stingley, and it might be time to change what you say you don't want to do, because it just looked way too easy for Amari Cooper the other day, or a couple weeks ago. And Cleveland is going to be seeking out Jalen Petrie. Jalen Petrie was benched in this game. This is a bounce back game for Jalen Petrie. He was so bad in this game that DeMeco Ryans decided he was going to sit Jalen Petrie on the bench. Now, does Jalen Petrie take it upon himself to bounce back? You would like to hope, but there's no doubt that you got to think that Kevin Stefanski, whoever else is looking at things for the Browns, they got to be looking at Jalen Petrie, and they got to be looking at what Amari Cooper did last time out and saying, how do we duplicate that? And that's going to be the biggest challenge for DeMeco Ryans. I'm sure that's going to be one of the first questions he gets asked tomorrow. Is how are you going to handle the situation that happened with DeMeco Ryans, or with Amari Cooper? And then you got to factor this in, and this has been kind of something that the Texans have been a little bit vulnerable to at times. They also have Njoku, and David Njoku's had a pretty good year. So those are going to be the two guys to look out. They don't necessarily run the rock, they don't run the rock as well as they have in the past. But Njoku and Cooper are problems, and you're going to have to check that out. The other factor, and I think this is, I don't know how exactly to measure this, but the last time out, and y'all remember this because the Texans had to do this against Tampa Bay, the Browns didn't have a kicker. So there were certain possessions where maybe in like a different situation, they would kick the field goal, and instead they went for it on fourth down. A couple times they ended up scoring. Another time at the end of the first half, they could have made it a 3-possession game, but they had to go for it, and that was where Stingley ended up getting the interception on Flacco. So I don't know like how that balances out, because they went for it on I think 2 possessions that they wouldn't have normally gone for it, and they ended up scoring touchdowns. Now, would they kick field goals in those situations? And we know for sure at the end of the second quarter, they would have kicked a field goal and made it a 3-possession game. So I don't know what the balance is of that. The point is they're going to have a kicker this time. It's not going to be Cleveland functioning without a kicker. That was something that kind of stuck out as well. Looking ahead, and I think this is fun stuff right here. If you're laying out your path, so right now you're hosting the Cleveland Browns. You got a winnable game. Baltimore is sitting there at the 1 seed, and I know you gotta take care of your business. You gotta handle your business before. Let's just worry about this. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Screw that. Obviously, you've got to win your game. But in this situation, when you're a young team, when you're a banged up team, the ideal scenarios are fun to talk about. I mean, we were talking about, would you like to host the Cleveland Browns? Would you like to host the Cleveland Browns or play the Chiefs? And most people, the overwhelming majority, wanted this scenario, and it ended up playing out. So they ended up taking care of their business and figuring it out. The ideal scenario right now for me, and I think y'all can agree, I want to if I would like to avoid Baltimore until assuming that the Texans are winning until an AFC championship game. I can't even say that with a straight face because that would be insane and I wouldn't bet on it. But I don't want to face the Baltimore Ravens, who are number one, the best team by far right now in the AFC. I don't even think there's a close second. And number two, they're going to be the most rested by far, and there won't be a close second. All these other teams are going to be playing playoff games. Baltimore's going to have a couple weeks of rest. So they're going to be iced up. They're going to be at home. They're going to be ready to roll. The way to avoid Baltimore would be if the Dolphins beat the Chiefs and they pull off that upset, which is going to be Saturday night on Peacock. So if the Dolphins beat the Chiefs, then Miami, which is a lower seed than the Texans because the Texans won their division, they would have to take on Baltimore. So that would be scenario one to potentially avoid the Ravens. Next one would be if the Steelers could upset the Bills because the Steelers will be the 7 seed and they would be the lower seed than the Texans. So if either one of those upsets happen, if either one of the road teams win and the Texans win, then I believe you can avoid Baltimore. I think it goes to the better spot. So that's where that would be. Shout out to T. Appreciate you. We have the better QB. Amari won't go for over 200 yards again. It'll be a lot closer. It should be. I mean, and you have the quarterback and you have a chance, especially in a game like this. You know, we're not in the area of Baltimore, Buffalo, Kansas City, Miami. We're not there yet. Cleveland is a good, nice little feel-good story. And the similarities that this game has to the Colts meeting is that the Colts and the Texans, like I'm sure there's a large portion of both of those fan bases that would have said, well, you know, it was a good season no matter what. You know, we got this far. Nobody expected it. It was a good season no matter what. We maximized our potential, which is really all you can ask for from your squads. There's a chance Texans and Browns will both be saying that too. It was a great season. It was fun. It surprised a lot of people. That won't be the case if the Texans move on. If the Texans move on, you might be still saying that if you're a Texans fan, but you beat any of those other teams and they lose to CJ Stroud at their place, man, there's going to be some hurt feelings. And fortunately, when you have a quarterback who can thrive in prime time, that's always a possibility. Again, overall theme, we'll get videos throughout the week. This is probably a 2 or 3 a day video week. The show Reaction Monday tomorrow, going to be stacked. DeMeco Ryan's at noon. We'll hear from him right here on YouTube on Sports Radio 610. And y'all have to check that out. B Yin Yang bringing up something random. The McDonald's snack wraps were underrated. They kind of were. I wasn't like too down on the snack wraps. But the one thing that's bothering me about these snack wraps is that new Jack commercial where they're talking about those are 400 calories. How the hell is fried chicken ranch and a tortilla 400 calories? I'm a little bit confused on that. That's a little wild to me. Browns, T again. Shout out to you. Browns are going to have to play the pass a lot more. I expect running lanes open for Singletary. I agree with that. I 100% agree with that. I think that I think that's a good point. Look, everything's better with CJ. I think the entire team plays better with CJ. So it's going to be a different game. I think Cleveland knows that. We definitely know that. And it's going to be fun. Few comments before I get out of here. Travis Porter says, funny listening to Browns fans that got whooped by Flacco all those years talk about how excited they are for playoff Joe to be on their side this year. Hope he doesn't conjure up some magic. Yeah, it is funny. It does happen, though. I remember when Russell Westbrook came to town as a Rocket, man. I never seen a player get slandered more than he. And that kind of happened. Just kind of be like that sometimes. Um, Alan says, "Hey, Landry, I believe Browns are beatable, but man, I'm concerned about Steven Nelson and his injury. I can see the Browns attacking him early and often." Steven Nelson is hurt. I don't like, and that's no secret. Props to him because that dude has been busting his ass every week to get out there. I remember when he didn't practice, I forget what week it was, but I mean, that dude was on the side field, apparently just busting his ass to get on the field. And this is when Stingley was out and you really, really needed him. So, Steven Nelson, I am a little bit concerned about his health. It's nothing that he can really do right now. And quite frankly, the only way for it to get better is for him to rest. Can you be without Steven Nelson against Cleveland? That's or does he gut it out? Because that's the only way it gets better. Hopefully, we see a little more Stingley on Amare. Again, 1.5 point dog. We'll get this going throughout the week. All the storylines. This is the right place. Y'all know this. Show of record on the radio and the top source for digital content. And it is a fun time. Playoffs in front of us. Dream scenarios. Let me know your scenario. Let me know how you're feeling about this Browns game. I think it's winnable. It can go either way. And it's damn sure going to be different than it was last time because CJ is going to be on the field. Reaction Monday tomorrow. Always remember when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together. Have a good night. Happy playoffs. See you at the stadium on Saturday. It's going to be crazy, and we're all in it together.
Locker room, yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk, yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize, every angle's what we really do. We the source, we the pulse of the city too. Landlocked, got the game in the headlock. Localize every time, can't stop, won't stop. Yeah, we top 2 and we not too. Plugged in daily digital on YouTube. We got taste for days, opinions to give, we got takeaways. If it's up, then it's up, we number one. You don't need to try your luck. Locker room, yeah, we in the locker room.